Hello. Today I wanted to talk about one of the subjects that I am more fascinated by, which is the difference between symbols and reality and how they can, I guess, change or distort our perception as human beings. So, symbols, at least for this conversation, is a broad idea that implies a system of representation about something in reality. Meaning, for example, the word apple is pointing towards a real apple, or even the image of an apple is pointing to, it's symbolizing a real apple. And that's the idea of language. It's a conveyance system in order to be able to communicate aspects of reality between human beings and sometimes within ourselves. Now, reality in itself, in this case, would be what some philosophers call the unspeakable reality, or the ineffable reality, which means that which cannot be explained through words. And it is what's surrounding you right now, what is surrounding me right now. Now, the trick is that, let's say, direct reality, what's behind me and what you're seeing right now, that's one thing. And on top of it, we superimpose language. And in that superimposition, we're able to, let's say, grant a lot of meaning to the world thanks to the ideas and concepts that we've learned, thanks to, let's say, the vocabulary that we've learned. That's why the more words you know, the more notions you know, let's say, the more you are able to elucidate nuances about the direct reality, the unspeakable reality. The problem is that as any tool or technology that we've created, we run the risk of it dominating us instead of we using it for our own benefit. So, for example, if you use the word green to define a leaf from a tree, actually try to do that the next time you're around a leaf. And if you say this is a green leaf, you're going to be accurate in terms of communicating to somebody, hey, what do you have in your hands? And you answer, I have a green leaf. But if you actually pay attention to it, you're going to start to notice that even the simplest of leaves has a lot of tones, a lot of textures, a lot of shapes that previously you were not aware of. Now, for the most part, a lot of people don't need to know that, but the basic idea behind the example that I'm giving is that we compress, which is the term that I ended up using, we compress reality in favor of the communication aspect of language. So this spreads through all the areas of life because, as I mentioned, language is superimposed on top of reality. This wouldn't be a problem, of course, or it is not a problem to the extent that it is an inevitable thing, both the production of language and the superimposition of it. But language also carries a historical and cultural component that is formed through the experience of human beings according to their own beliefs and pre-assumptions about the world. So, for example, and I mentioned this in a previous video, we can get the idea that we are, for example, an essence, a soul inside a body through the traditions of the Middle East religions and cultures that have influenced us all the way to this present moment. Other cultures from Eastern cultures, Eastern societies, could conceptualize that same experience of being in a completely different way, which is not a mind inside a body, but a body in itself, meaning that one thing is to say, I have a body, which implies that I am something that is inside a body, a soul or a mind, and I am a body. Both are interpretations according to the confirmation of their particular languages, but they create a different perspective of how we understand ourselves. The tricky situation is which one is, let's say, closer to the truth. I'm not going to get into that because it's a way longer conversation, but the main idea to take out of this is that language, the way that it's produced, and even their syntactical rules, like the way that language is structured, can, let's say, distort the way that we see reality. And distort in this case is not bad or good, it's just like a way that, let's say, it skews the way that we see it. So why is this important? Because sometimes we give symbols more power than what they're pointing at. So in the same way that the word apple is pointing towards the apple, or a flag is pointing towards a country, a real landmass of nature that's, let's say, defined by a boundary, sometimes we're more concerned about not burning the flag than destroying the landmass. Now, the landmass is real and the symbol is important, but if the symbol is not more important, if the symbol is more important than the actual thing that is pointing towards, and we've lost track of what we're trying to get at, or the way that language and symbols are supposed to be used. In the same way that, for example, if you've seen maybe someone in a relationship or in a marriage, that there's no relationship in there, but the word, the symbol of marriage that they have is so powerful that they believe that that prevents or precludes them from not having an actual relationship, that all they need is to have the title, the symbol of the thing that they don't have in their experience, in their real experience. It's a complicated subject because, of course, I'm trying to explain this through language, but the best thing that you can do, and I guess in a roundabout way, that this is why I love meditation. Meditation allows you to let go of the linguistic systems that you have in your head and access the nonverbal aspect of reality. And when you're able to just see something and not think what it is, for example, you're just drinking a cup of coffee and you're not thinking about drinking the cup of coffee, or I am present drinking a cup of coffee, and you just see the coffee, you'll start to notice how complex and multidimensional reality is, how impressive it is. If you're, let's say, too submerged in the universe of language, then you just might see it as a cup of coffee. And for example, if you're correlating it in terms of this is just a cup of coffee in a mechanistic world that doesn't actually mean anything, and that I'm just the deterministic result of mathematical improbability, we don't think that, but most of the times it is within us, or whatever ideology that you carry within you, that transforms and distorts the way that we're just drinking a cup of coffee. And it sounds like an exaggeration, but it's actually true. This is why I love video games, because in a sense, video games make me remember that it's kind of like, I guess the other example are pictures. When you see a picture of a place, of a forest, suddenly you pay attention, because the artist's purpose, in a sense, is make you see the beauty of what's surrounding us all the time. Video games, in that sense, do the same thing. When you're just walking with a character on your PlayStation or whatever, and you're walking through a park, and you're going like, "Oh, this is incredible." You're in a way better reality in the unspeakable reality. It's way more detailed, way more specified. Not specified, way more detailed and way more, let's say, substantial. And there's a purpose for video games because they're fun and whatever, but the idea is that you can start to see that reality in itself is so much more than the symbols that we use to represent it. Now, according to your temperament, for example, I've talked with friends that have a Eastern approach to life in terms of philosophy and practices, and I have friends that are 100% Western, and there's a mix in between that spectrum, of course. But the idea is that regardless of where you fall in terms of your own preference for ideological systems or, I guess, interpretations of reality, there's something above that. I'm not going to say below that, above that, which is the experience in itself. And that's the thing that we should always be paying attention to, more than any narrative or production of language. So when people talk about anything, it doesn't matter what they say. That's why this saying is so important. It doesn't matter what the person says, but what they do. Because what they do is evidencing what they're really up to. So if a person is telling you, I'm all for peace, but keeps hitting you in the face, eventually your brain is going to start to realize, wait, the words, the symbols that he's using are not real, are not actually coherent with what's happening. Or for example, if you have a friend that always treats you badly or poorly, you're going to realize, oh, I was holding on to the symbol and I was not seeing that in reality it was non-existent, the friendship. It takes time. At least for me, it took time to start to see everything without the linguistic grid. And it's not that you have to turn it off forever, but it's really beneficial to see through it. Because if not, then you start to, only see it through certain filters. And the world is always trying to convince you about something, about a certain narrative, about a certain position, about how the world is, why the world is in this way, why should you be happy or upset or convinced about a certain subject. And the best practice that you can do is see what's going on. Pay attention to reality outside of language. And that will give you a better idea of what is actually being done and what's actually happening. So in a sense, the most important thing is how we experience things, how we feel about things. Because that gives us a better clue about what's going on than any concept that we might hold on to. And it will make us learn about where we are and what reality is actually about. And that's it. I'll see you next time. And subscribe if you like the content that I keep putting out. See you next time.